Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description.
Hello everybody. Just a decade ago, and the arrival of any 480 horsepower BMW would have been a talking point for petrol heads across the globe. Even if it was an SUV, this was still a car we were going to discuss. And so it should really be a rather damning indictment of the state of the modern automotive landscape that here we have not just a 470 horsepower BMW, but one the firm calls the most important car they've made this millennium, and yet there is not a single one of my friends, petrolheady or otherwise, that has asked me about this, the brand new BMW iX3. Now, of course, there is a school of thought which will say that is because this is an EV, and at this point in time, the general public has completely and totally fallen out of love with them. But I refuse to believe that, and I instead think a large part of the reason many people think EVs are boring is not because they're EVs, but because they are boring cars. But the truth is, I don't think there is a real reason for an EV to be inherently dull. Sure, they'll lose a bit of the magic of their old combustion engine forebears, but if we're being honest with ourselves, there are a lot of old cars with petrol or diesel engines in where the engine really was far from the star of the show. And they do bring with them a great many benefits, particularly for the ordinary daily usable car. And the iX3, along with a number of other cars from other companies, now appear to be the fruit of over a decade's worth of hard work. This, as far as BMW see it, and many others, is the EV as it really should have always been. Sadly, just because you don't put 102 octane in the back of this to make it go, there'll already be a whole bunch of people out there that have written it off. But those, I suspect, are the very same people that will tell you they don't like EVs because their brother's friend's cousin read a post on Facebook by a lady once who copied something off 4chan that said a mate of theirs had an EV once and it ate their dog. In the real world, things are, of course, a little bit more complicated, and as with every new car launch, particularly one as significant as this, there's a lot going on here. But I can assure you, this is a car you don't want to ignore, because it's actually really quite good. And the main thing that got me thinking about this car, and the reason I'm here today, well, it all started with this. Want to know more? Well, stay tuned for today's episode of JayEmm on Cars. Now, just so that you don't think I've gone soft, simply because we've got the first nice weather today that we've seen here in Britain for 5 months, I want to start with a bit of a gripe. What is it with manufacturers introducing bold new eras for their companies using the most forgettable cars possible? Audi did it just over half a decade ago with the e-tron. I mean, there we had the most important car the firm had built for a long time, arguably since the R8 or the TT, the first all-electric Audi full stop, and you'd never pick it out of a lineup. Here we then have BMW's first in their Neue Klasse line, a name which hasn't been used since the 1970s and started in the 1960s. It was a new dawn for the company. It saw the introduction of models such as the O2, which itself then gave birth to the 3 Series. That was the foundations of the company most of us came to know and love over the decades after. Those were the models that made BMW a global icon. It is a name they have not used since, and they would not resurrect lightly. To get us to this point has cost billions, and just about everything in this car is new from the ground up. Over the next couple of years, we are told to expect 40 models built using the Neue Klasse underpinnings, and yet this is how they announce it to the world. A small to medium-sized, if we can believe this is a small car these days, SUV. And though it is, I promise you, a very good car, if I was trying to make a statement, this is not how I do it. Just a decade ago, when BMW wanted to prove a point they'd done something new, we got the i3 and the i8. But there is hope, I promise you. And that is where this comes in. The iconic BMW kidney grille. Has there been any other design feature that was so integral to a manufacturer, which over the last decade they have desecrated more? I think possibly not. It got to the point of parody, didn't it? However, with this, they themselves have clearly taken on the feedback and gone, yeah, okay, we need to do something about that, don't we? And this means it's a company that's listening. Now, as for the rest of the styling, it's well, a bit busy, as most modern cars are, and it's okay, isn't it? I don't think going to win all that many awards, but it's an improvement on other BMWs of late. However, what else have they been up to? There is a new 6th generation version of BMW's electrical architecture. It's an 800 volt system with 400 volt backwards compatibility and a peak charging ability of 400 kilowatts. This means it can deliver, frankly, staggering numbers on the bench. However, the reality is, in the real world, you're unlikely to encounter them, and so you probably don't care about them. What you will care about, though, is the car's claimed 500-mile range, the best of any EV currently on sale in the UK. And even if we make allowances for the test, the real world, and various other things, a real world 350 to 400 mile range on the motorway, which from today I've seen is very possible, is incredibly impressive. And that comes courtesy of a new, now more energy dense 108.7 kilowatt hour usable battery. The car's digital brain, as BMW call it, i.e. the suite of software and hardware that makes a modern day car go, has been redesigned from the ground up. Now, the entire vehicle is controlled by a quartet of super brains, which themselves deal with everything from the massage seats to the ADAS systems. And on top of that, open the door, you'll be greeted with an interior that has seen the biggest step change in BMW for the last decade and a half. Now, when I say they've changed everything, I mean it. In fact, just about the only things I recognise in here from previous BMWs are the badges, some of the icons on the screen, and that's it. Everything else in here is new. And though I admit I was dubious, for the most part, this is a big win, and it's been a very, very long time since I've got in the interior of a new car and said that. That was in spite of a few misgivings surrounding things like, for example, this centre screen here. Sadly, there are no physical buttons for it. Now, what we do have down here is no longer an iDrive rotary selector, but instead your gear selector, no start-stop button anymore, control for the rear mister and the front demister, volume, parking brake, and that's about it. You do have, mercifully, physical controls over here for your windows and wing mirrors and your seats. The pedals down here look quite nice too. And this screen, well, it's just a bit needlessly complicated, if I'm honest. It's full of all sorts of gimmicks and things, and again, comes from that school of thought that says the people who designed this don't actually drive. The steering wheel, though, this is another thing that had me curious. Now, there are two options in the iX3. This is the optional M Sport Pro, one standard, of course, in the M Sport Pro, the top of the 3 trim levels. In the others, you get this hideous monstrosity, and even this looks like something from one of Megatron's wet dreams. However, it's nice in the hand. Remember this decade we've gone through of BMW making everything needlessly big and squishy in the steering wheel department? They've stopped. However, no paddles on the back for your regen. That's interesting. Not a fan of the way these things are styled, but they're a little bit better to use than they may look. These stalks behind are nice, fairly intuitive and pleasing to use, but the thing they're really proud of, this panoramic iDrive concept. And when I heard about it, I was a little bit worried, because I thought this was going to be the same as other manufacturers where they've just chucked a massive screen in the car, and technically I suppose that's exactly what they've done. But what it means is this section up here, where you're looking effectively under the bonnet, you've got a huge full width display which you can customize as you like. It'll do all sorts of things, tell you everything from your time of day to the air quality in Munich, which is currently 47. I don't know if that's good or not. You've got Bluetooth information, temperature, charging status, gear indicator, navigation system info, everything you want. On top of that, there's also a 3D heads-up display in here, which frankly is made redundant by this lovely display, and I thought this was going to be a gimmick. I actually really like it. It works quite well, and I think gives this car a little bit of an air of class, and indeed the whole thing feels nicely put together. When you compare this to the Audi Q4 that I drove last year, which is the same money, this honestly feels like it's a car that costs another £20,000 or £30,000. And sure, all of the materials in here are sustainably sourced. BMW are very proud of the factory, which is one of their most sustainable in the business. It runs by default on entirely renewable electricity. But should you want, you can still have merino leather in here. You can have different paint colours and things. And there's still a lot BMW about it. Which of course they'll tell you everything about this car is BMW, but we're not stupid, are we? No, we are not. And I've played Messerlöffel before, and I know the golden rule of German cars is do not assume that anything is standard. In fact, when the car is expensive, you can almost guarantee that nothing is. So, how is it with the iX3? Well, currently they're launching it with only one motor option, the 470 horsepower iX3 50 xDrive. You'll have the base model, M Sport and M Sport Pro. Now, BMW UK said they expected a lot of people to go for the M Sport trim because here in Britain we like that. However, most people have instead gone for the M Sport Pro, and that might be because the price spread is not anywhere near as much as I thought it was going to be. In fact, from the base model to the M Sport Pro, it's just a £4,000 difference. And with the M Sport Pro, you get things like this nicer interior, the fancy wheel, you get adaptive LED headlights and other things that should be standard already. However, this car still has some options. I don't really understand what the point of having an M Sport Pro is and then having to option it, but hey ho, here we are. So this car has, on top of the £61,750 base price, the space silver paint at £875, these daft 22-inch alloy wheels which do nothing beyond to give your detailer a heart attack and ruin the ride. They're £3,300. The heated steering wheel, 250 quid. That is disgusting, BMW, just chuck it in. The tow bar is £1,000, and exciting news, this car can tow 2 tons. Yep. It has the BMW iconic glow, which means that the grille at the front is illuminated, and that, as far as I'm concerned, should be illegal, let alone free. M Sport brakes with red calipers, no cost. The panoramic sunroof is £1,275. The sun protection glass is £450. The M Sport seat belts, they're included. The parking assistant Pro that BMW are keen to show off today, where the car parks itself, I don't trust that sort of stuff, that's £775. You've got the M steering wheel, again included. The M Sport seats, that's also included with this pack. And you have the Technology Plus pack, £1,700 worth of stuff that should all be included. The aforementioned heads-up display, which I think is redundant, the Harman Kardon stereo, which is just nowhere near good enough, and the 3-zone automatic climate control. Meaning this car comes in for a grand total of £72,162. But in reality, at least half of that stuff you can happily do without, meaning for £65,000 you can have yourself a very, very nicely optioned BMW iX3 50 xDrive M Sport Pro. And this car may already be a shoo-in for the highly prestigious and completely fictitious JayEmm Awards, specifically the category for the most optimistically named part of the car, which here is one of its 4 super brains, specifically the one which controls the car's driving dynamics, that they call the Heart of Joy. And if you are to believe the press release, means that when you get behind the wheel of this, it feels like you're in an M3 CSL. So does it? Well, of course, to find out, I took it out for a bit of a jolly. Now, I think it would be unfair to call this car a revelation, but I have to say it was a very pleasing thing to drive. Now, sadly, at this point in time, there are still a few things on the options list that have yet to make their way over, including adaptive dampers. And those, I fear, with this are an essential because, in typical BMW fashion, particularly when paired with these enormous alloys, though not run-flat tyres, the ride is a little overly firm. This, however, has been a complaint of M Sport BMWs for the last 2,000 years. The rest of it, though, works very well. You get in it, certainly got enough go. 0 to 62 is dealt with here in just under 5 seconds. The top speed is 130 mile an hour. The interior space is incredible. It feels like you've got near 7 series levels of room in the back, not even 5 series. The boot is a good size. It doesn't feel enormous on the road. The parking tech is, yes, very impressive. There are cameras everywhere, even if you don't specify any of the optional packages. And it's just nice. It's not going to set your heart on fire. I don't think it ever was going to, and that's a real shame, because for a car as important and as bold as this, with this whole Neue Klasse thing BMW are doing, I really would have liked them to have done something a little more daring. However, if anybody were to come to me saying, we want something decent, premium feeling, that has plenty of range in it, and you know what? With a car like this, I can hand on heart say the EV bit does not enter into it. This is just a good car. This, in fact, is everything that Audi Q4 should have been and wasn't. And with this, I think BMW have once again set the gold standard for a car in this class. I can't think of anything else that I've driven for this kind of money, in this sort of package, that does this better. I've only had the day with it. This really is more of a sort of tease. This is a first drive, but those first impressions have been really quite positive. I got my gripes, sure. I would like more actual buttons in there. The mode options are frankly daft. The car doesn't need all of the ones it has. It should just have one button that says Sport, and of course they were happy to tell me that yes, you can set that, but it's just daft. Just have normal and Sport. That's all it needs. That's it. Even the steering feel is, it's okay, like it's not great. But the fundamentals here, they're right. If they said to me, do you want to leave your car here? Do you want to take this home? I would. I really would. My car's not here though. We're in my mate's VW up. But if I can, I want to get my hands on this and do some proper miles in it, because with this you have an EV that they claim can do it, and I want to see if it can. So, BMW, yeah, you are back in my good books. Well done. See you all for the next one. Bye-bye.